Welcome to the Vintage Ballers Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Coreno, and on today's episode, we have Ricky Pierce joining the show. Ricky played 16 years in the NBA and is known as one of the greatest six men in NBA history, winning the award twice in 1987 and 1990. Ricky also has his own basketball called the AccuShot 22. So without further ado, please welcome Ricky Pierce. Well, again, Ricky, it's an honor having you on the show because I grew up in the early 80s. You know, I was born in 83. I have an older brother who was a good basketball player, and he would watch a lot of NBA in college when I was younger. When I was 4, 5, 6, 7 years old. So I remember, Milwaukee Ricky Pierce before anything else when I was a little kid. And of course, your Seattle days, we'll get into all that. But, I want to go back to your childhood and we'll go Rice and everything. But it's just cool to have you on the show because when I really started getting into the NBA, you were part of that Seattle squad in the early 90s with GP and Rain Man and Kendall Gill, all those guys. So
Right.
I've been following your career for quite a while now. And of course, the AccuShot, I want to get into that. So there's a lot of fun stuff to cover tonight. But
Okay.
what I want to get into, Ricky, is starting your childhood. And you grew up in Dallas, correct?
Garland, right outside of Dallas.
Okay, and you went to Garland High School. Well, when you grew up there, when did you fall in love with the game of basketball?
Well, when I was in the 5th grade. I always played when I was a kid, just around the local gyms and, in the 5th grade when I started playing organized ball.
And was there were you a fan of the Mavericks or was there any favorite team at that time?
We didn't have the Mavericks. I think the Chaparrals was around.
Okay.
Dallas Chaparrals. Yeah. And the Mavericks came in probably when I was I don't remember the grade, but they came in late, high school maybe.
What were the teams in Texas then? Were the Spurs and Rockets there? Or?
Well, they had the Spurs and the Rockets. They just didn't have the Mavericks.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you have any favorite player growing up?
Well, I didn't really have a favorite professional player, but, it was this one guy that I used to play one-on-one with that taught me a lot about basketball, Charlie Williams. He was a lot older. So he and I played quite a bit. So I would say that guy, he taught me a lot.
And how'd you meet him?
Well, he played ball in high school in Garland. And
okay.
He ran a local gym, the local gym in his, when he was home for college, so that was his job, opening the gym in the evening and closing up at 9 o'clock. And after everyone would play, right? After everyone would play for the evening, Charlie and I would stay, say if guys finished playing at, say, 8:30, Charlie and I would go in and shoot and play one-on-one. And of course he would win. I was learning a lot. I was a youngster. Yeah.
It's always good to be schooled by an older guy like that.
Oh, yeah.
Get your lumps in early.
That's right.
Now, did you, when you were younger, what position were you when you were in, middle school?
I played center.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I was a center.
How tall were you back then?
I can't really recall my height, but I was taller than everyone.
Okay.
I'm 6'5" in high school, in the 9th grade.
Wow.
Yeah.
And were you always, like in high school, were you always a center, or when did you go to a wing?
Well, I played center, but I was all over the place.
Okay.
I stumped all, and say if we played a zone, I was in the middle. But throughout on the offensive end, I'm all over the place, inside, outside. And then when in high school, we had a guy 6'7", so we had a couple 6'7" guys. So that sort of put me on the wing more.
And did you, like in high school, when did you realize that, I could play big time college basketball? Before your Walla Walla and Rice days, when did you think to yourself, like, I could take this to the next level?
Well, it started off just fun. It wasn't even about really getting to the top for me in the professional level. I just enjoyed playing the game, right? and took it one step at a time like that. I didn't realize really that I had an opportunity to play in the big league until I got to college, I just never wanted it to end. I mean, for each level I played on, I just wanted it to continue to the next level because of the competition.
And describe your college days. 'Cause I know you started off at Walla Walla Community College, I believe, and then of course you transferred to Rice. What happened there, and what was your experience like at both places?
Well, Walla Walla was different, first time being away from home. Of course, living in Texas, then going to Washington State in the wintertime, never really had that experience playing in freezing cold weather with snow.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a huge difference, but it was challenging. The players was fantastic, I mean, I ran across some great players. I can't really recall all of the guys' names, but it was very, very competitive, and so, and then at Rice, I wanted to be closer to home, where my family could watch me play. I felt more comfortable in Texas. And we had great players on the team. I mean, nice guys that was, played hard. I mean, fantastic people. I mean, they were great people to play with.
And what are some of your favorite memories at Rice? Do you have any games that stick out in particular?
Well, it was always competitive. The Arkansas games, they always going to have 3, 4, 5 pros. Texas A&M, Baylor. Those guys was good. I mean, it was very competitive, So I can't really recall one particular game I can recall a game. My senior year, a few games, matter of fact. We went on the West Coast, right? And we played quite a few West Coast teams. And then we went to Hawaii and played in Aloha Classic, right?
Okay. Yep.
And, with Thurl Bailey, Quinn Daly, and the host team, right? They played Rice. So they figured they have a pretty easy victory. You see what I'm saying? So that tournament really sticks out because we won that tournament, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah, we beat not Wichita State. We beat San Francisco. Then we beat North Carolina State for the championship.
Wow.
And, I met my wife in Hawaii. So, I mean, I'll never forget that. And we've been married over 30 years.
Wow. And was that, Ricky, was that right around when NC State won the championship? It had to be somewhere around there.
I think they won it that following year.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a pretty impressive victory to beat them in the championship.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that was pretty good. I mean, we was the host first game, and then we end up winning it all.
And, throughout that experience in college and at Rice, did you think in your mind, like, I'm going to get drafted in the NBA, or was that not a thought process at the time? Or were you thinking something different?
Well, I figured I had a chance at that point. I was second leading scorer in the country. And I came up against some pretty talented players throughout that year, and I held my own pretty well. And the professional level was the next level. Remember, I told you earlier in the story, I just wanted to go to the next stage of competition, and that was the only thing left. And I was still had the hunger to play basketball. And so I wanted to give it a try.
I love it. And I saw, so in 82, going into the draft night, you're taken by the Pistons. Did you work out with them before? Did you have any idea they were going to take you?
Well, you would see in sports magazines, different teams considering this guy, that guy. And I didn't have really no idea, to be honest with you. I didn't even know who was on the team. I mean, when I got drafted, I didn't even know who was on that team.
They
It
didn't have
was,
Isaiah yet, did they?
yeah, they had
Oh,
Isaiah.
they did have Isaiah. Okay. I didn't realize he was there. Okay.
Yeah.
And when you got there, what was that experience like? And who else was there on that team besides Isaiah?
Well, Vinny Johnson.
Oh, Vinny was there. Okay.
Yeah, Lambeer.
Oh, all those guys were there
He
then.
was there. Yeah, yeah. Uh, Edgar Jones, he was there. Kent Benson, he played with Indiana.
Yep.
I think he had won an NCAA title. So, yeah, it was fun. It was different.
So that was really kind of the beginning of the Bad Boys, the core of that team getting to before Dumars and Rodman, the other guys showed up. You got to kind of experience the beginning of that.
Right. I mean, we didn't have that good of a team. We didn't make the playoffs that first year. And of course, I didn't play. I mean, the scrub minutes. I don't consider that playing. But yeah, I mean, it was different.
And then you get traded to San Diego. The Clippers at the time were based in San Diego. And, you're there for a year. What was that like? And it was Terry Cummings on that team, I believe, as well.
Terry, he was there. Norm Nixon was there.
Oh, Norm was there. Okay.
Yeah. Bill Walton, he was injured.
Wow.
I really wanted to play with Bill because Bill was one of the guys that I came up watching, especially when they won that championship with Portland.
Mm-hmm.
But he was injured. So, we had a young team. Norm, he was the only experienced player. And of course, Bill, and he was injured. It was a tough year for us. Our goal was to win 25 games.
So the bar wasn't set too high.
Yeah, that was our goal, to win 25 games.
What did you win that year? Do you remember?
I can't even remember, but I don't think we won 25. I mean,
okay.
It was a tough year.
And you and Terry were pretty young then. So that was kind of the beginning of your careers.
Oh yeah. I mean, I grew up with Terry and Craig. We started off with the Clippers. So that gave us opportunity to play. I didn't play much with the Pistons, so I had an opportunity to play when I got with the Clippers.
And were you coming off the bench as like one of the first couple of guys off the bench, or what was your role in that team?
Well, I had a starting role.
Okay.
I had a starting role until a guy fell into my knee at practice and sprained my knee. And so after that, we were midway through the season. And so I did some rehabbing and I came off the bench after that.
And I mean, Ricky, you are known as one of the greatest six men in NBA history. So did you, at that time in your career, obviously, you're young and you're kind of learning your role, but did you ever think you would fall into the role as not only a sixth man, but one of the greatest in the history of the NBA?
Well, to be honest with you, Brad, I just wanted an opportunity to play. After that first year, not playing at all, whatever role that they asked me to do, I was there to accept it and prove that I belong in the league. And so it just so happened that they was telling me come off the bench, of course, right? And so I just took advantage of it.
I mean, I feel like as a sixth man, as you go forward here, and we'll talk about your Milwaukee days, but you got everyone kind of remembers, Iguodala, Tony Kukoc, any of these six men on these great teams. They have a very important role in the team, and really every team, the sixth man has an important role. So, the fact that you eventually would become one of those, two-time, sixth man of the year and all the accolades you would rack up in your career. I look back now and when I grew up watching you, you were known as one of the two or three greatest six men in that league at the time. So, it's interesting to kind of see the progression of where you went through in college, being the second leading scorer in the nation, to where you kind of started not playing much in the beginning of your career to now being traded to Milwaukee with Terry Cummings. And then of course, everything kind of opened up for you at that point. I believe, Terry, I read the next 6 seasons after that, you averaged 17 points a game off the bench. That's incredible in a 6-year span. So you just don't see that very much. And, Milwaukee, how did that open up your career? And did you kind of expect the success that you had there?
Well, the thing with Milwaukee, we had a fantastic coach, Don Nelson.
Mm-hmm. Legendary.
He knew the game. Yeah, he knew the game. he knew how to place players in positions to be successful. And he told me that, hey man, you can be a great six man, just come out and play aggressive and play hard. And he put you in a position to be successful. And the guys I played with, the character was fantastic. Everyone came out, played to win, shared the ball, and made it fun. The game was fun in Milwaukee.
And at that same time, obviously, you have a young Michael Jordan coming into the league, and you guys were, you guys played them a lot. What was it like playing against MJ? And did you see his greatness right away? It seemed like his first season or two, everyone kind of knew this kid's going to be special. But what did you think of MJ when he first came in the league?
Oh, fantastic ball player. Heart, drive. Were coached by a legendary college coach. Played with fantastic players. And I think the system that he played in is more suited for young players with his ability to make that transition smooth. And of course, he loved the game and he knew how to play. Of course, we saw the greatness in him. Yes.
And I know he mentioned playing against you guys multiple times. I think he talks about Sidney Moncrief and a couple other people on that Bucks team. He said you guys always that was a tough matchup for them because a lot of good defenders and it was a solid Milwaukee team. Do you remember any of those games against him or in any particular moment?
Well, we started off beating him, Mm-hmm. He was young, Sidney Moncrief. Of course, he's a Hall of Famer.
Oh, yeah.
Great defender, and he knew how to play defense. Of course, we trapped him and double teamed him. But it was some knockdown dragouts, but we would beat him at the beginning. And as time went on and he developed more into Air Jordan, he was impossible to stop, even with the double teams. I remember a game, we had, I think, 3 7-footers standing up under the goal. He came from the baseline and jumped over all 3 of them and dunked the ball.
Wow.
Jumped over all 3 of them. It was crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, he was a different kind of cat. I watched the documentary, of course, I think we all did last year. And, it's funny because they show some of the Milwaukee clips, against you guys. And he talked about how that was one of his toughest matchups. But looking back, and he was so skinny and coming out, he wasn't really that, you didn't think of him as what he became, of course. He was a great, talented player, but I don't think anybody knew he was going to be arguably the greatest of all time. And then within a couple of years, he just established himself as, in the 80s, Ricky, the physicality of the NBA back then was so different than it is now. And I remember when growing up, it wasn't anything to see people get elbowed going down the lane, get thrown down. That's just how it was back then. How did you, you were used to it, of course, because you grew up with that kind of physicality, but what was it like playing in that era of such physical basketball?
Oh, it was fun. It was tough. They test your manhood. If you're going to play, if you belong, you're going to have to be physical. You're going to have to be tough, So it was kind of fun, Yeah. And we had a lot of tough guys. You look at the guys, Charles Oakley, for instance. He one of the guys, Bill Laimbeer.
Oh, yeah.
Those guys will knock you down, when you come inside.
Who is a guy? Do you have any guy that you went against that you thought twice about going down the lane?
Well, you have to be smart and selective. If you have big guys at my height and size, you have to be smart enough to know not to go in on 7-footers, okay, that's physical. You have to be smart and selective. So that's the way I played the game. I wasn't going to challenge a guy that I know that I'm going to get knocked down or get hurt or I don't have a chance. I played my role. I tried to play the game as smart as I could play.
And as a sixth man, what was your mentality coming into the game? You obviously want to be aggressive, but when to become one of the greatest 6 men in NBA history, what kind of perspective do you have on that role and how you played it?
Well, first I look at what do we need? What do I need to do to pick the momentum up or keep the momentum going? And of course, my strength is scoring the ball. And so I looked at it that way, that I'm going to go out and play as aggressive as I can to score, keep the momentum going, or pick up the momentum. I mean, that was my take on when I come into the game. I sort of viewed that on the way to the game, the teams you playing. One thing that Bill Walton told me when I was with the Clippers, I was playing everybody the same way, every player. I'm learning, right? And he pulled me to the side and he said, young fellow, he told me, he said, you have good ability, you strong, you tough, but you have to learn player tendencies. You playing everybody the same way. So I go back to my apartment, I'm like, man, I got a lot to learn. All these players. And of course they had Iceman and all those guys in their prime, but they on their way out, but they were still super great players. And I'm basically still a rookie, right? So it was different.
I mean, you mentioned the Iceman. You got to play against some truly iconic players at the end of their career, guys like the Iceman. And then, of course, the beginning careers of Isaiah, MJ, Magic in the prime, Bird in his prime. I mean, there was a ton of talent back then. What an incredible era of the NBA. Dr. J, of course, was on the way out, but still in the league and still playing well. So it was just an era, when you look back at that, like early mid 80s era, a mix of a ton of iconic players from both the 70s and, of course, that would become iconic in the late 80s and 90s. So you really got to go against a lot of great players. And like I said, the league back then, as you mentioned, it was a man's league back then. I mean, you couldn't, you had to take your licks. So in Milwaukee, your run there, what is some of your favorite moments in Milwaukee that you look back on?
Probably the playoff games, playing against the Boston Celtic team.
What was that like?
They had great players. Organization been winning championships back even Bill Russell days. I mean, they had a pedigree of, everything was just working in their favor. I mean, we battled those guys, but we just couldn't get them. I mean, we was always fall short in the playoffs, but it was always fun, the competition, and even Philly. We finally beat Philly, Dr. J's last year. We knocked them out of the playoffs, so we was really, really happy about that. Wow. The competition was fierce. I'm telling you. Excuse me, but the competition was fierce. It was fun.
I mean, the East was loaded back then. You got every series had to be just a knockdown drag out. You're talking about the Sixers, of course. I mean, you have Barkley coming in, Dr. J. You got the young MJ. You have the Pistons coming up. You have the Cavs had a squad, with the Price and Doherty. There's so many great teams back then in the East that, and of course the Celtics were the team back then. So, right. When you go into the playoffs, there's no easy series. There's no first round series where you're thinking, oh, we got this one. Every series is a knockdown drag out. And, were the Celtics pretty much the presumptive favorites every year, or were other teams you thought that could get past them?
Well, they was definitely going to be one of the favorites because of the players. The Robert Parrish, they had Kevin McHale, right? And of course Larry, Dennis Johnson. They was loaded with experienced and talented players, but anyone could be beat. It was just, who go out and play the hardest. And, it was just, I don't know. Some team lost it that should have won. But Boston, it was just their time, It was their time.
And in '86, I know they played the Rockets in the finals, and that was kind of a shocker to me. Was when Samson was healthy and with Samson Olajuwon. What was that duo like to play against when Samson was healthy, of course, because he got hurt towards the beginning of his career and really was never the same player. But with him and Akeem, they have two talented, pretty much one guy's 7'4", the other guy's pretty much 7 foot, both of them played kind of like guards. What was it like playing against those guys?
Twin towers.
Unbelievable.
That's when they kept coming out, but we need twin towers, right? That was just like back then. It was like, excuse me, they talking about the big three now. Back then it was the Twin Towers. I mean, they were both fantastic players for sure. Uh, but the teams are tough and loaded, so you can have Twin Towers and still get beat.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was proven, right?
Yeah.
So, but the competition was, they great players and it was fun. And I think back then, a lot of guys, they really enjoyed the competition, Uh, I played against a lot of great players and I watched a lot of great players. And most of the guys that I played against, those not the ones that I really watch and look at and say, this guy is fantastic. One of the guys that I really liked to watch was Kareem. Mm-hmm. When I was coming up, Kareem was my favorite player. I mean, he was dominant.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of players talk about, the Twin Towers, Michael Jordan, and those guys. But Kareem was, to me, was the best player, scorer that I ever seen.
He was unbelievable.
I was watching him make hook shots from the corner, from the free throw line.
Wow.
I'm like, this guy here is unbelievable. And of course, Bob McAdoo. I mean, a lot of the guys that I really liked were scorers, of course. And Bob McAdoo, I used to love watching him shoot that jumper.
That's maybe you don't hear it as often, but Bob McAdoo, what a great player he was.
Oh, yeah.
You talked about Kareem. I mean, the hook shot, how unstoppable and unguardable it was, really. I mean, what was it like? The Showtime Lakers with Magic, Kareem, Worthy, Coop, all those guys, compared to the Celtics, seemed like very different styles. But, what was it like playing against Showtime Lakers, and how do you go up against, that offense?
Well, you better have your track shoes on, because they was out and running, boy.
Oh yeah.
They had a fantastic team. And back in that era, I mean, I really enjoyed playing against the Lakers. I mean, they kept it exciting. And, at that time, it was their time, like when it was Boston time, right? I mean, they just had the squad, And they had, of course, Magic, and you had Kareem in the middle, although he had some age on him, but he was still a dominant player. I mean, they had great players all around the board. James Worthy, Byron make the big shots, when they needed. And they even had not Isaiah, they had Norm Nixon. Mm-hmm. You remember when they had Norm?
Yep.
Yeah.
I think you had Cooper, Rambis. I mean, a lot of guys in that team. They were, it was definitely a great team. For the young kids who never got to see like a Magic Johnson, for example, how great was he? I mean, you always hear a lot of the guys I have in the show who are a little bit younger than you say that Magic was their idol growing up. But what was it like playing against him, and how, on the floor as a floor general, do you think he's the greatest point guard of all time?
Well, I didn't see the guys back in the day before me, like Cousy, and a lot of people, they would say Cousy. I spent time with Oscar Robertson in Milwaukee, and Oscar would tell me that he the best player that ever lived, and he probably, in his time, he was the best player. But in Magic Johnson heyday, he was the best point guard, Magic, in his heyday. I mean, with his height, the way he controlled the game, the tempo, passed that ball. I mean, I enjoyed playing against him, and I also enjoyed watching him. Yeah, so he was fantastic.
I mean, when I was a little kid, the Showtime Lakers, I mean, it was just must-watch TV. I mean, no one never saw anything like that before. With Kareem in the middle, of course, even though, like you said, he was aging, but he was still dominant. And you had Big Game James, and just the whole team. It was kind of just an iconic team. And Magic, I've never seen anything like. Of course, later on, we'd see like, White Chocolate and some other guys come in the league and do the no-look passes, but that had never really, been a thing. I mean, the way Magic did it, it was almost like you're watching a show. I mean, it wasn't just an NBA game. He's putting on a show, and It was incredible to watch.
Yeah. And, you look at the young guys now, the players they watching, they didn't see Magic. You understand? They didn't see Kareem. They seen LeBron. They seen Kevin Durant. They seen Kyrie. And no question, those guys are fantastic basketball players, right? But we talking about the Magic Johnson days, right? I don't think they have a player right now that can play like Magic in this league. I love watching LeBron. He's a monster, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Magic Johnson was a showstopper.
Yes, he
and
was.
he could get it, and he could get it done.
I mean, I remember watching on ESPN Classic years ago when I was a little kid. I watched the whole game when he came in and had to play center. I think it was one of those finals games, a clinching game. And I don't think Kareem played, or I can't remember how that went, but he had to play center. He scored, 40 some points. I mean,
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I've never seen anything like that. A point guard, yes, he was 6'9", but the point, to switch your position in the middle of a biggest game of your life and to put up 40 some, you just don't see that. I mean, that is something that only maybe a LeBron, or there's not very many players that could do that. And it just showed his greatness.
Well, you have heart. That's the thing about him. Not only he could play, his heart was big, his determination to win, And the thing about it, he also possessed the ability to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, to have a point guard that really wasn't the greatest shooter, it wasn't like he was known for shooting, and to be that dominant without being a great shooter, that's just incredible. I mean, you just don't see that very often. Have a guy who's, I mean, obviously a Steph Curry, guys who can shoot, that's one thing. But when you have a guy who can purely just dominate based on the way he controls the game and the way he passes the ball, again, like you said, I don't know if there's anybody that can in the current NBA who's quite like that. I mean, LeBron has his own thing, and I'm from Cleveland, so I've seen LeBron firsthand how great he is, but he's a different type of dominant. But Magic was just, I remember as a little kid, my brother loved Magic and loved the Showtime Lakers. We watch them all the time, and I loved it as a 5, 6, 7-year-old kid because I knew there were gonna be no look passes, and you never knew what was going to happen next, and it was just very exciting basketball.
But you know what, Brad? I think that Irvin, he could have became a scorer if he had to play that position, the scoring position, because he have the ability.
Mm-hmm.
If you would have put a point guard out there as he was coming up, playing, and they needed him to score 20 points a game, I bet you he could do it.
I agree with you, 100%, 100%. And again, it's just fun. I mean, now that we're talking about all these different teams, like again, the era you played in, Ricky, was so different. It just seemed like every team, or I mean, a good majority of the teams had multiple great players, and it wasn't just a few teams. I feel the current NBA now, and I still love the NBA, I always will. I just love basketball, but the current NBA now is so stacked with, I mean, the Nets and the Lakers, and certain teams are so stacked, and everyone else is kind of below them. There's not as much parity. Where back in your days, I feel there was more parity. I mean, even though you had the Lakers and Celtics who were dominant, don't get me wrong, but you had other teams. I mean, the Rockets beat them the one year. You had you guys. You had, the Pistons coming up. You had so many other teams that could have a shot. And I felt it was a little bit different watching those games back then. And even through MJ's run, we knew MJ was just a different cat, won 6 out of 8. But even then, I mean, the Knicks took him to the limit a couple of times. The Pacers. I mean, it wasn't just a foregone conclusion that he was going to win it every year. You still had other teams he had to go through. And I feel like it was just a very different era in that respect, where you had so many, great teams.
Yeah, it is different. I mean, back in my day, we had a lot of teams that could win it and could do it. I mean, you talking about today players, and you look at the team that they talking most about, they have stacked the teams with 3 scores or 3 of the best players they could put together. You understand? And now you have maybe 2 or 3 teams that they're talking about.
Exactly.
Excuse me. Right? They have
exactly.
2, 3 teams that they talking. Well, this team here is a fantastic. But you and I was talking earlier about the Knicks, Cleveland. We were talking about all the great teams that could play the game. See, we were talking about a lot of different teams. And now you're only talking about 3 teams that maybe have a chance, but it's their era, if that's the way they're going to play it. I mean, go ahead and play it. I mean, I still like watching it.
Me too.
And the players are worked hard to get there. So, we can't take that away from the NBA today, because the players that's in the NBA, right? I mean, they came up just like I did. They trained, they did sprint work, they jump rope, got up at 5 a.m, worked 3 days. So I take my hat off to the one that's in there even today, although the game is different.
Oh, I completely agree. And being from Cleveland, I grew up on the Price Doherty, Ron Harper, Larry Nance Senior Cavs. And I mean, again, loaded. I mean, Hot Rod Williams, that team, Craig Elo, I mean, one talented guy after another. And they had a hard time getting out of the first round half the time just because the East was so loaded. And I mean, think about that. I mean, you have a team that has potentially 3 or 4 all-stars on it, young guys, but guys who became all-stars at one time in their career. And they're having a hard time just beating Michael in the first round.
Hey,
So,
Cleveland had a tough team. I mean, and at one point, teams would think, well, man, we have a chance. We can go in there and beat Cleveland. But if you look at it and you smart and you understand the game, when you're playing against Cleveland, partner, you better bring a lunch because it's going to be tough,
Yep.
And yeah. I mean, I remember those days. I mean, I used to enjoy playing against Cleveland. I mean, you go there and, hey, Lonnie Shelton, at one time, he was one of the older guys there. He was.
Yep.
You remember Lonnie, right?
I remember Lonnie. Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Tough guy. I even remember World Be Free.
World Be Free. Yep. That was right when I was born. My dad always talks about him. Yep.
Yeah. World Boy, I tell you. He was a piece of work,
Yeah. They had, I mean, even before then, they had Nate Thurman and Bingo Smith, and you had, Austin Carr is still here. He's our, we love Austin. He's Mr. Cavalier.
Yeah.
So they Cavs had, we always get pressed because of LeBron, obviously, because he was here for 11 years, but the Cavs had some great teams before LeBron ever got here. For, you look at the 30-year history before LeBron got here, they had some very good teams here. He was never could get over the hump. And then, of course, LeBron comes back and gets the job done. But I want to get back to your playing days. So you're at the end of Milwaukee era. You were an all-star 91. What was it like to be, to finally become an all-star?
Well, to me, all the hard work paid off. That when I really look back on it from 5th grade coming up through junior high, the training with Charlie Williams and on from high school to junior college to college, all the hard work paid off. All the working in the summers, running in the heat, running sprints, and with all the great players in the league, right? I mean, it was great players. I mean, so to be chosen an all-star, that's a big achievement, and that's just how I looked at it. All the hard work, being recognized as one of the best players at that point of the season.
So at that point in your career, Ricky, you were obviously very well established. 2-time Sixth Man of the Year award in 87 and 90, and then of course All-Star 91. You're averaging a ton of points off the bench. I mean, you are one of the premier players in the NBA at that point. And then you get traded to Seattle. So I think Dale Ellis comes to Milwaukee, and you're out in Seattle. And they had a very different team. They're younger. You had Sean Kemp, Gary Payton, Kendall Gill, I think Dana Barros, a lot of younger guys there. You're kind of the veteran guy coming out there. What was your role going into that team, and what did you feel? Did you feel they had something special brewing?
Well, KC Jones told me just come out and do what you do. Played for KC, wonderful guy. He won championships himself. He know what's up. And he told me just come out and play. And he had told me you have some young players and they talented, which was fine. I enjoyed it. I could see the writing on the wall with Gary and Sean, with their talent, with the energy that they was bringing to the game. It was really a lot of fun.
Had to be.
Yeah, and I like, but I knew that I would have to do my part, my scoring part. That's the reason I was there. But it was a fun team to play with.
I mean, they had so many names. Michael Cage, I think, was on that team, and there was just so many, names on that team, especially in the early mid '90s. And you guys had some runs back then in the playoffs and had some fun. I mean, there were so many different moments. Especially, I think you were there for when Kemp dunked over Alton Liston. He did the tomahawk dunk. I mean, there's so many moments that you see from back in those days with GP and Sean and yourself and everybody else. And then you guys took Phoenix in '93 to 7 games in the Western Conference Finals. Take us through that series, because obviously Phoenix was loaded as well with Chuck and KJ and Dan Marley, and you had a bunch of guys, Cedric Sabalas. What was that series like, and how tough was it to lose in 7 games?
Well, home court advantage, I mean, really, really mattered. You at home, you have your crowd. We played great basketball, but home court really makes a difference, especially if you have a team like Phoenix and you have players that playing with pride and heart. You know, they didn't want to lose game 7 at home. You know, we came and we fought. Charles Barkley, he was just so determined. He wanted the championship too bad. Charles, I wish he could have had a bad game that day, but you had an outstanding team now. And, you know, we had young players. Kemp was still young. Gary was still young. Kevin Johnson was a seasoned vet. Mm-hmm. Charles, you know, those guys was good. You know, they had Dan Marley. I don't think he missed a shot in the series, you know. So, you know, it was just a tough series and somebody have to lose. And we were just unfortunate.
Well, because I remember watching as a kid that series, and it was pretty evenly matched. I mean, it was two talented teams, and I don't think anybody knew who was really going to pull that one out. But you said home court obviously made the difference, but those are two very similar, or as far as talent wise, you know. I mean, the Suns had Seth Sabalas, and I think Richard Dumas, a young Richard Dumas, was on that team, and Danny Ainge was coming off the bench, I think, in that team. So, and you guys were loaded as well. I mean, it was just two fun Western Conference teams going at each other, and you know, of course, the winner has to play MJ and that whole juggernaut in the finals. But it was, I think that was a series I always remember as a kid growing up. One of the first playoff series I really got into, and I watched. You know, I really remember because I was probably 9 or 10 then. And my brother, we were watching all the games, and I remember vividly watching that. And that was the same time MJ was playing against the Knicks in the Eastern Conference Finals. So it was two great series going on at one time.
Yeah. So you kept up with it, huh, Brad?
Oh, Rick, yeah. You was into it, huh? I was known as a kid in my grade. I have 72 NBA jerseys from the 90s, 72. And I every Christmas, birthday, I would always ask my mom and dad or whoever would get me a gift, get me an NBA jersey from a different team. Wow. So I have 72 different jerseys. Yep. And that was like my thing as a kid. People would come over, my friends were like, oh man, I want to put on, you know, the Grant Hill jersey or put on whatever it was, you know, the Clyde Drexler jersey. Oh yeah. So I was, and I had, so me and my friends, I mean, back then in the 90s, especially, basketball was really becoming a worldwide phenomenon. And so we grew up with the NBA was a huge deal for my group of friends. I'm in my 30s now, my mid 30s. But back then, you know, the NBA was becoming the league, you know, a worldwide league. So we grew up with Sports Center and watching you guys on TV all the time. So we were the first generation to really grow up with that. So, you know, the NBA was a big deal. And you know, I knew every player and every team, no joke. I mean, I would memorize all the rosters. And so, you know, I've known your name since I was a little kid. So it wasn't, you know, and it's funny because like, growing up, my brother also, you know, he was a very good basketball player himself. He was one of the better players in the Cleveland area back then, high school wise. And, you know, so I had his friends who would talk about you guys as well. So I was always around the game, whether it was watching college or watching the NBA. And then we were all Cavs fans. We grew up in Cleveland. So I go out to Richfield Coliseum and watch 3-4 games a year with my dad. So again, I watched a lot of basketball back then.
Yeah, but, it was fun. It was fun. It was
so much fun.
Yeah. I mean, I had a ball playing, Brad. I mean, I wouldn't trade it in for nothing. I mean, I wanted to be a player. I enjoyed it. And I think my era was the best era for its competition. And I think even the players today, they might even say their era is the best. But I think my era was the best.
I mean, maybe me and you are biased here, but I think that 80s, 90s era, it's hard to beat competition-wise. Yeah. And just the way the game was played and the players back then. I mean, the players today, don't get me wrong, they're phenomenal. I mean, the shooting has gotten better. Everything today, they're just super athletic, and it's not taking away what those guys can do today. Steph Curry is the greatest shooter I've ever seen, Ricky. Maybe I'm wrong. I've never seen anybody can shoot like that before. Him and Clay they took it to another level. But I think the game back when you played, again, the competition, I've never seen, you know, series like that before, where they're just knockdown, drag out physical series.
Well, and you look at the shooters today. When I was playing in that era, right? Before you shoot a shot, you getting held. You getting the forearm. They riding you out. They pushing you off balance. You need a great balance. And today players, in my opinion, they don't have to worry about that because you can't touch.
That's true. No hand checking. Yep.
Yeah. So when you come out, I mean, that's all you're doing is shooting. I
That's
mean,
true.
back in the era when we was playing, before you take that shot, you've been beat up. So you taking a shot after you've been beat up now. And the guys today, they not taking a shot and getting beat up before the shot. Now, I'm not taking anything away from Clay or Steph. I mean, I like watching them too now. I mean, Steph hit those shots, and I mean, it's crazy, and I enjoy watching him, right? Not taking anything away from him at all. But I'm just saying that in the era I was playing, you getting beat up before you take that shot.
That's an excellent point. And back in the physicality, like you said, you're coming off of screens and getting knocked and getting hand checked and getting elbowed, and it's a whole different game than it is
That's
now.
right.
And when you like, I guess looking at the era now, do you ever wish, Ricky, that you could have played in this era with the no hand checking and just have free reign to do what you want?
It'd be fun. I mean, the way you penetrate, you can't touch, you can't do anything. As a scorer, it would be a lot of fun. As a defender, boy, you have to be able to move your feet and position yourself and really play a smart game, if you don't want to get a foul called on you. But on the offensive end, I would love it.
I mean, I asked a lot of guys who played in your era that question. They all kind of salivate. They're like, I would have loved to play in this era for the reasons you just said.
Right.
I'm going to put you on the spot here. Who is the greatest teammate you ever played with?
The greatest teammate.
So maybe not the most talented player, but just the greatest teammate.
Well, I would have to go back to that Milwaukee era. When you say the greatest teammate, we're not talking about as a player. We're talking about overall person.
Exactly.
Or that rah-rah guy that's saying, okay, guys, I'm not the star. I'm the guy. I'm just a guy. Good guy. You know what guy I would say?
Who?
Nate McMillan.
Really?
Nate McMillan. I mean, that guy, he would come in and he would play hard, even if he don't make a bucket, if he don't do nothing else. He was there rah-rah and cheering and saying, hey, guys, come on. It's that guy.
Wow, and that's a guy I forgot to mention before, known as Mr. Sonic. He was a great player off the bench. He was really one of the main six men in the league back then in the 90s, coming off the bench, backing up GP for all those years.
And I'm gonna tell you, he reminded me more of when I left Milwaukee, it was Paul Pressey making those passes, playing that defense, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I went to the Sonics, I fell right back in playing with the same type of guy that I really enjoyed playing with. A guy that looked pass first because that's his job, to get everybody involved. And so I really enjoyed playing with Nate.
Yeah, that's a great name. It's funny. I just posted him on my page I think it was 4 or 5 days ago. And he always gets tons of love from Sonic fans. And, he's still known as Mr. Sonic. So, did you, back then playing in Seattle and the passion those fans have for the team, and it was just, Key Arena, and just back then it was such a great era. Having no team in Seattle now, what is that like for you, a former player like you played there? And you hope, I'm hoping, I think we all do, that they get a team eventually. But, do you ever foresee that happening, that they would eventually leave Seattle?
Well, I would love to see a team in Seattle because of the support, the city. They really gave us fantastic support, and it's a great city to play in. And most teams, they enjoy going to Seattle to play. Mm-hmm. I mean, because of the support, the love of the game. And matter of fact, I think some of the former players that won championships maybe still there. Maybe Freddie Brown. And you're talking about a shooter. You're talking about a great shooter. Downtown was fantastic. Yeah. You remember downtown, right?
I do. Yep. I do remember downtown. I mean, that's another name I forgot about. There's so many names back then.
That's right.
I mean, it's because I have a lot of friends out in Seattle, and even to this day, I haven't been out there in over probably about 2 years now because of the pandemic. But whenever I go there, Ricky, I still see tons of Sonics gear. People just love their Sonics, and they miss them, and people are angry. They want them back, and that was a part of the city. It was part of the culture. So, I think it's to hear a former player like yourself, and I've had a couple other people that played for the Sonics on, and they said the same thing. Like, I hope they get a team someday because it is such a passionate fan base.
I think it's coming.
I think it is too.
Yeah, the NBA know. They know the city. They know the cry. They hear people like myself, like you, and even the people in Seattle. They want a team.
Yep. No, I agree. I think we're going to see it someday soon, I hope. I want to get a couple more questions for you, and then I want to ask you about the AccuShot. So as far as your playing days, I'm going to ask you two more questions about people you played against. Who was the toughest guy you had to go against offensively? Like who you had to guard offensively?
Well, all of them was hard for me. I mean, because I'm known as a scorer, right? But on the serious side, it's more the guys like the Iceman. He wasn't that fast or quick, but he was just unstoppable. And he's 6'8", or was he taller than that?
I think he was 6. Yeah, I think he was like 6'8".
Yeah. And yeah. And I would say, well, I'm playing him when I'm still learning how to play. So I say, well, if I was a smarter player, I probably could have guarded him better. Then I think back and I say, well, they've had superstar defenders on this guy and he still scored 50.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, I don't know. but Ice, and of course, in the Chicago days with Michael Jordan, he gonna always be an unstoppable player to guard. You just back off of him and give him this jump shot and say, well, okay, just shoot jumpers all night. I would say those two probably was the toughest. I mean, although it was a lot of tough ones.
Oh yeah.
I mean, some that I think about after the show and say, well, you remember this guy? Or
Yep.
Do you remember that guy? I mean, they was all tough. Those guys are tough, okay?
Now, another guy that you play with, actually, Reggie Miller, where do you put him in that conversation? Because, I mean, it seems like he was a very tough guy to guard, too, coming off those screens and quick as lightning, get that shot off quick.
Yeah, I told you after the show, you would think about Reggie Miller. I mean, the guy going to hit incredible shots. He's a fantastic shooter, and he works hard. That's another, that works his tail off to be a fantastic player. Yeah, Reggie, tough guy. Yeah.
Okay, now we're going to flip it around. Toughest defender you played against.
Toughest defender, I would say, when Dennis Rodman came to the Pistons. He's 6, whatever tall, 8, seemed like he's 6'9" sometime. With that long reach, I mean, strong. Of course, you could hand check back then, and he knew how to hand check well. He put that hand on your hips and try to nudge you and push you and control you. I would say that guy for his height, So you really have to be crafty as a scorer, especially at my height, to get it over that guy and he running at you, or he on you. You have to really set him up. But most of the guys around my height, they played hard and they fantastic defenders. But that guy was probably the toughest for me.
I think pound for pound, Ricky, it's hard to. I mean, I think he's arguably the or one of the greatest defenders of all time. Rodman. He could switch on pick and rolls, cover almost every position on the floor. He was quick. Right. He was smart. I mean, he could do everything. Athletic. It's just I think in his prime, I put him up against anybody in NBA history. I really would.
Yeah, and he didn't care if you knocked him down. I mean, you get happy. You knock him down, that make him feel good. You can add him or do whatever you want to do to him.
Oh yeah.
Well, we playing now.
Yeah, he was another different kind of cat. I mean, where do you put Scotty at as far as defenders?
Oh, Scotty was a good on-ball defender. I mean, he was long, athletic. You have to know what you're doing if you're trying to score over a guy like that. I mean, you just can't come out and throw up a ball. You have to, know what you're doing.
Now, at the end of your career, take us through the last couple of years. I think you played for Indiana and a couple other Golden State, I believe, for a little bit. What was that like at the end of your career? And when did you kind of wind down and think like, okay, this is enough for me?
Well, as you get older in your career, teams move you around a lot, from team to team, because I was known to have good work ethics and worked hard and carried myself a certain way. And so a lot of teams want you around their younger players, to try and show them the ropes. But I look back and I was looking at Dominique is gone. A lot of the players, Isaiah and Magic, just a lot of the guys was gone, and you playing against all these 22, 4, you 39, 38, 37. And it's changing for you, and that's what happens. If you play 16 years, they making that change. It's a changeover, right? Like right now, right? Who in the league you see? LeBron, you see. I mean, that's a part of the change. Rick and Magic, all of us, Michael, we all out, So that was part of the change that I was seeing. But I got my feel. That's the most important thing with me as an individual. It wasn't that about the other players. I got my feel, what I wanted to do. Yeah. So the competition, the way I looked at it is it's over for me. I made it to the top. It's not another level to play. If it was another level after the NBA, I would have kept playing, but that was it.
And did you ever get to play against Kobe?
Yeah, I did. Matter of fact, I was with Denver, and he was a youngster. I think he was a rookie that year, maybe. I can't recall the year, but I know he was quick, and I know I was old. I had to guard him, and you're not as. I mean, you're not as quick as you used to be when you at the tail end of your career.
Yep.
And so, whatever rookie come in, he gonna be pretty quick compared to you, right? But you playing a guy with some incredible ability, you could tell he was going to be a fantastic player.
I was going to ask you that. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I remember his first year, he was kind of, he had flashes of brilliance, but then, he's still a rookie. He was young. And then that second year, he kind of broke out and made the All-Star game, and then the rest is history. But, so you were around for young Kobe, young Shaq, all those guys coming into the league. And then, of course, you were also around the heyday of the Magics and Birds and Isaiahs and Dominiques and all those guys. So you really got to see a ton of, I think Duncan came in the league your last year. So you got to.
I played against Duncan. Let's see. Me and Duncan, didn't we play a few years against one another?
I think you did, at least 1 year, yeah. Because I think you retired the year he was a rookie, I believe.
Oh, okay. That was his rookie year?
Yep. It was 97, 98. I think that was your last year with Milwaukee, I believe, when you went back to Milwaukee. So
yeah.
Yep. So you got to play against a lot of incredible players from both eras. Allen Iverson would have been in the end of that era that you played in, and a lot of those guys came in around then. So you were really, you got to see the Icemans of the world all the way through the MJs and Magics and Birds, all the way to the Duncans and Iversons and Garnetts and those guys. So what an incredible run for those 16 years.
Oh yeah, I enjoyed every year. It was fun, maybe except for that rookie year.
You didn't play much.
Yeah, that wasn't fun at all. Yeah.
Now, going into retirement and seeing where you are now, take us through the process of developing the AccuShot basketball and the system that you came up with, you and your son. I want to hear more about that.
Well, it started when he was playing in the YMCA league. I taught him how to attack the basket and all of that stuff. And boy, he was going at it too. At one time, I had to tell him to pass the ball because the parents was looking over at me like, he was shooting all the shots and he was going by guys just scoring. And I had to tell him, pass the ball.
You got to know it's Ricky Pierce's son.
Yeah, pass before you get me killed up here. But a lot of the parents, they was asking me, they would recognize that I played. And so they was asking me to help their kid or evaluate their kid. And so what I was seeing when they were shooting the ball, they were shot putting the ball. They didn't actually have it on the fingertip pads on the release. They're more shot putting. And so and that what gave me the idea to come up with the fingertip pads on the basketball, right? I said, well, let me just come up with something. Maybe I can help more kids, not only at this YMCA gym, but all across the country, right? And so, because a lot of kids were shooting it that way. So that's why I came up and partnered with Spalding to manufacture the AccuShot ball, to put the 10 ovals on the ball that would improve the player consistency, more improve their consistency when they shoot the ball.
And how, when was that exactly? How long ago was that?
Oh, it's been quite a few years. I mean, I got into some other things after that. I had manufactured the ball through a middleman, and the quality wasn't what I really wanted. And I got into some other businesses. And so once I established the other businesses, I circled back around to the ball. I got back into training players, and so I called Spalding up, and they loved the idea, what I was doing with the AccuShot ball. And so they say, well, look, we'll manufacture for you.
Wow.
And so I just got back into that. And Brad, we talk about shooters, right? My thing is, a lot of players, they have that in them, right? They have it in them. Just like about Magic could score the ball. But some players need some help. And that's why I came in with that AccuShot 22 ball. I'm going to show it to you if you can see it.
Yes, you see it perfectly. Yep.
You see that? And you see those ovals?
Yep.
That's the right hand. Check this side out. This the left hand, right? And you have that opening at the top of your shot. If you release it on your fingertip pads, it's going to create that backspin rotation. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's going to give you that muscle memory in your head, which is going to give you more consistency and accuracy. I mean, the more you use it, and, it's not just a shooting ball, it's an all-purpose ball. You can play with it.
And Ricky, so if someone bought that basketball and they're shooting, 50, 60, 100 times a day, what do you recommend to a shooter if they really want to get their skills where they want them to be, and they really want to develop an accurate shot? Are you talking, 7 days a week? Are you talking 5 days a week? How many shots? Like, what do you tell kids?
Well, when you wake up in the morning, take it to school with you. Do like Magic used to do. He used to dribble a ball to school, from my understanding. A lot of the great ball handlers, they kept a ball in their hand. You can get this ball in your bed at night and line it up in your fingertip pads and just play with it. Shoot it up in the air. See, just shoot it up in the air when you land in the bed or sitting in the chair like I'm doing now. I can watch it. I've watched television, watch games, and I just keep the ball in my hand because it feels good. So that's what I recommend for players that get this ball. Go to abdul-jabbar.com, get you a ball, use it every day, take it to the gym with you, shoot it, wear it out. I used to wear balls out. I didn't save a ball. I would get a ball and I wear it out, right? To where I would have to get another one. I would wear my ball out. Even when I was in the pros, right? I made sure my ball got slick. If my ball didn't slick, if it wasn't slick and I didn't wear it out right, I'm not working with it. I don't need it if it's just sitting there looking pretty. So I recommend kids get this AccuShot ball, practice with it, play with it. You can play 3-on-3, 1-on-1, 5-on-5, and use it. And you'll see what it do for you.
And you said, again, where could they find that at?
Go to abdul-jabbar.com.
Okay.
ACCUSHOT22.com.
Okay. It's fine. I'm going to actually order one for my nephew. He's going to be a senior next year, and he's a shooter. All he does is come off the bench and shoot. So this will be perfect for his driveway. Perfect.
And another thing that I do, Brad, I put a signed autograph card in there with that's really a surprise for the player.
Oh, yeah. My nephew would love that. He's a huge NBA fan. Huge NBA fan. So
I don't really advertise it like that, That's just another thing that I do. I sign up one of my NBA cards and put it in the box.
Oh, that's excellent. He will love that. Yeah, his name is Brady, and he's again huge. It's my brother's son, and
Okay.
big basketball guy. So he'll absolutely love that. Yeah, I'll be getting him that soon.
My-
One of the last question I wanted to ask you, Rick, and again, I really thank you for your time coming on tonight and talking to me. This has been awesome. And I ask every guest this question. I love hearing the answer. But when you look back at your career, what do you want the legacy of Ricky Pierce to be?
that he's a good father, a good husband. He laid it out on the line, and he's a God-fearing man. That's what I want them to understand. Put God first in your life, you understand? And you can do all things if you put God in your life.
I love it. That's a great message for everybody out there. So anybody who, I think, especially in the world we live in today, I think having, to fall back on some kind of, whether it's faith in the universe or yourself or God or what, just some kind of faith, people need to have that. I think it's really important in today's world. And again, Ricky, I really appreciate you coming on the show and talking about your career and everything that you've done in your career. Because it's been, you had a really incredible career. I mean, not many people play in the NBA for 16 years. So that's a really it's a wonderful run. And again, for me, you're kind of one of the childhood guys I grew up watching. So it's kind of an honor for me to have you come on the show and talk about your career. And it's really cool because again, I remember a lot of watching you as a kid, and to now to actually talk to you firsthand like this and get a firsthand, you talking about your career like you have. It's been awesome for me. So really appreciate it.
Hey, it was awesome being on the show. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, thanks, Ricky. And again, I'll be in touch. I'm going to be buying one of those balls. So
all right.
You'll be seeing an order coming in soon.
All right, because appreciate you, man.
All right. Appreciate you too, Ricky. Have a good one.
Right.
Okay.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.